Settle in, friend, because I have a story to tell you. A story that happened long ago, in a time when the world was younger and hearts were perhaps a little braver. It was the year 1847 in a small fishing village by the edge of the sea. Now, Isla had been diving in those waters since she was barely 3 and had to only reach out to touch her father's boat. Every morning, she would slip under the waves as if she were paying a visit to an old friend. Down below there were coral gardens, so, well, what with colors to make a sunset jealous and fish that danced as though they knew secrets the rest of us had forgotten. Well, but this morning was an exception. The water felt hollowness, chill, in a way that made no connection with the outside air. As Isla swam deeper, her heart began to fall. Her coral gardens were her underwater Eden, now turned into white-bone graveyards. Bleached, dead, silent dot, she hung there in that awful silence. And for the first time in her 19 years, Isla was lonely. That's when she saw it. Tucked into a small crevice, fighting for life. One tiny piece of coral, still the merest hint of pink. No bigger than a child's fist, but somehow breathing. She held it gently as she surfaced. This small miracle in her palms. Old Captain Reeves was mending his nets when Isla climbed onto the dock, her treasure cupped in her hands. "Look," she whispered, kneeling down beside him. "It's still alive." The captain's weather-beaten face softened, but his eyes held a sadness that ran deeper than the ocean itself. "Child," he said gently, "I have fished these waters for 40 years. When the sea decides to die, there is nothing either you or I can do to stop it. But what if we're wrong?" Isla's voice was barely above a whisper. "What if it's not dying? What if it's just waiting?" The old man dropped his nets and really looked at her this time. At this girl holding on to hope with the same fierce grip as she held that tiny piece of coral. "You remember what happened to the last fool who thought he could save the world?" His tone was good-humored. They broke their heart trying. Isla rose to her feet, bare toes finding their grip on the wet planks. "Then," she said, "I'll have to make sure my heart is stronger than theirs." 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of Isla working alone, trying to build underwater gardens, trying to convince the village council, trying to make anyone care about what was dying beneath the waves. "Ah!" She gave a little cry of dismay when he turned and saw his smile. "You don't understand." He laughed. "Maybe not enough, my dear girl." He smiled unruffably. "Progress, my dear girl, requires sacrifice. The ocean is just ... the price we pay for prosperity. Worst of it all, the piece of coral she had was losing its color. Each day a little more pink was leaving it. Each day more and more it became the underwater burial ground that she had found. It didn't make sense. Hunger made her weak, dizzy, and trembling so much she spilled as much food as made it into her mouth. Rewritten text. It didn't make any sense. It made her weak from hunger, dizzy, her hand shaking so much that she spilled almost as much food as she got to her mouth. A written text. Pa said secretly stored celery in the spotless green and white Frigidaire. Gathered them with words that nothing was to be said. Rewritten text. Pa stored celery secretly in the almost spotless green and white Frigidaire. Words came together, warning of no words to be uttered. A stunning invention in pure science. Less perhaps even than the exegesis of his peers' rewritten text. A pretty discovery in natural research. Fewer perhaps even than the interpretations of his co-workers. That evening, Isla took the end of the corrugated iron to the end of the pier, exposed it to the moon, and felt something snap inside her chest. "Sorry," she says to the little creature. "I'm so sorry I couldn't save you." At 12, Marcus perhaps was just 12 seasons old when he became a man, but no more than that. Son of the village blacksmith, sat down silently next to her on the wooden floor. After a long moment, he finally spoke. "I was told by my grandma that The ocean remembers all things. All the raindrops that ever fell, all tears that ever rolled down a cheek. She said, sometimes it gets sick, but it never forgets how to be healthy. Isla glanced at the boy, the kid who somehow got what every adult hadn't. She also said, Marcus continued, that the ocean doesn't need us to save it. It just needs us to stop poisoning it long enough for it to save itself. And all at once, Isla realized she'd been thinking about this all wrong. The next morning, instead of trying to persuade the grown-ups, Isla headed for the schoolhouse. She packed a piece of coral, a small glass bowl, and a narrative. There was once an ocean that adored this village, bestowed everything upon it. Fish to eat, pearls to trade, safe harborage from storms. And then the ocean had got very sick, and everyone thought it was going to die. 23 pairs of young eyes watched her as she put the coral fragment into the bowl of seawater. Now, what do you suppose happened next? She asked. Little Sarah raised her hand. Did the ocean die? No, said Isla, and she smiled for the first time. In weeks, the ocean was just waiting for someone to remember how to love it back. And for the next hour, she taught them about coral, about fish, about the delicate balance that kept their world alive. And then she asked them that question that would change everything. Who would like to help the ocean remember how to be healthy? Every hand in the room shot up by the time evening fell. 23 children had dragged their parents down to the harbor. 23 young voices were asking why their grown-ups were letting the ocean die. And do you know what? Sometimes it takes a child's question to wake a grown-up's conscience. 6 months later, Isla was floating over what once had been an underwater. Bonyard. Colors bloomed below her like an artist's dream. Her tiny coral fragment had grown into a small reef, surrounded by transplants from healthier waters. Fish had come back, drawn by that promise of life. The water itself seemed to sparkle with life. So had the village. Mr. Blackwood's factory now passed its waste through ingenious systems designed by a young engineer from the capital. Systems paid for by the tourist boats that came to see the miracle reef. Old Captain Reeves was beside her, his face alight with wonder. Child, you know what I learned? He kept his body up easily by treading water. The ocean wasn't dying. We were just too busy drowning to notice it was trying to live. Isla nodded, knowing she felt and understood something more significant than words. She hadn't been the ocean's savior by being stronger, smarter, or even more stubborn than anyone else. She'd saved it by remembering what every child knows, but every adult forgets. That love is not a feeling you have, but a choice you make. Every single day, even when it seems impossible. Especially when it seems impossible. So that's the story of the girl who wouldn't let the ocean die. But don't imagine for a moment that this is just a tale of water and corals and fish. Tell me, what ocean in your life is in need of saving at this stage? What beautiful thing have you watched tortured to its slow death as everyone around you says it's too late anyways? That here's the truth Isla learned, and I hope you'll remember. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It doesn't need you to have all the answers. It just needs you to care enough to start. One small piece of coral, one child's question, one person who won't give up. That's how every miracle begins. If you've been reminded by this story that miracles are the work of ordinary people who simply refuse to quit, don't keep it to yourself. Pass it on to someone in need of a little reminder of his or her own power. And if you'd like more stories to wake up the hero hiding in your heart, stay tuned for the next tale. Because the world's filled with oceans waiting to be saved, and heroes waiting to be born.